We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
From your favorite source for Chicago White Sox talk, delivering news, interviews, analysis, and more. This is the Sox Machine Podcast with your hosts, Jim Margulis, James Fegan, and Josh Nelson.
Thanks, Rob, and welcome to the Sox Machine Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Nelson, and it's Sunday night, August 18th, 2024, as we bring you a new episode. Well, the Chicago White Sox have accomplished more history this weekend. After losing on Saturday, the White Sox have been officially eliminated from the postseason. That's the earliest any team has been eliminated from the playoffs since the divisional era, which started back in 1969. With a 30-95 record, maybe the only solace remaining for White Sox fans is the end is near. There's just 37 games left to go, but also there's 37 games left to go. We'll chat about what's keeping us distracted from the misery of White Sox baseball, plus recap what happened in Houston as the new bench coach takes a swipe at Pedro Grifol, preview the upcoming road trip in San Francisco, and at the end, we'll take a look around Major League Baseball as old friend Michael Kopech continues to dominate in Los Angeles and how the Minnesota Twins and Kansas City Royals are sitting pretty in the American League postseason race. James Fegan is still in North Carolina reporting on assignment, so joining me for this episode is the managing editor of SoxMachine.com. It's Jim Margulis. And Jim, officially eliminated from the playoffs. We'll talk more about that in a second. As the White Sox are 30-95. But I have to ask you, sir, because we have been podcasting together for 11 seasons. You've been writing about the White Sox longer than that. This is obviously the worst season we've ever covered, even though it is a historical season. What else are you doing to distract you from the misery that is watching Chicago White Sox baseball?
Aside from having a 2.5-year-old, which is a good way to constantly occupy yourself with just having to follow him around. Curling season is starting here in Nashville. Like I used to point out back when I lived in upstate New York and curling season started in October, that there was never a conflict since I started curling with the White Sox playing in October, and I lived there until 2020. So like they never overlapped. I wanted one season to overlap and say, oh, I can't make this game because I have to watch an ALCS game or something like that. Not even World Series. I was like hoping for the ALCS, like one postseason series victory. Now in Nashville, because of the complex that we curl out of, our season starts earlier because we have to clear the way by the holiday season because of all these corporate events that come in. So our season starts Monday. There isn't even a conflict with August curling. That's how bad it is right now. Like the White Sox knew that my league was bumped. They're like, well, I guess we got to get out of the way for old Jim here so he can doesn't have to worry about following games. And yeah, so I think that's maybe the bellwethers. Whenever my curling season starts in fall or late summer, as it were, the White Sox will not be playing meaningful baseball by then. And you could argue that they haven't been playing meaningful baseball at all this year, but I think that's my leading theory right now.
Well, at least you have something constructive, which that's what I was trying to do like this weekend. Like I did a couple of fantasy football drafts this weekend online. I'm trying to learn how to cook better. I watch a lot of cooking videos on Instagram Reels, and I'm challenging myself to follow good recipes. Italian dishes look simple to make, but I'm watching very experienced chefs that are making things look extremely easy, and it cannot be that easy. So I'm a bit scared to try some of those recipes, but I did bake a cake. I'm trying out Dolly Parton's banana cake box mix. I'll report back after it cools down and I put some frosting on it, and I'm not much of a baker at all. But again, I'm trying to be constructive in my distractions away from the White Sox. Like this mentality of, I made this. Not that podcasting about the White Sox is not constructive, but we are at the point of the season, my friend, where things are just draining, especially talking about this team. Like I mentioned in the intro, on one hand, there's only 37 games left in the season, but on the other side, there's still 37 more games left to go, Jim. And I don't even know if they're going to win 10 more times out of that 37. And if they do, that's like a better winning percentage than they posted in the first 125 games of this season.
Yeah, well, when it comes to Italian food, a lot of it is quality of ingredients versus like the complexity of the recipe and just like understanding timing. Like watching Ina Garden with my wife, like who knows a bit about cooking, it always looks so simple when she's cooking in her chef's kitchen. And my wife will point out like, oh, that costs X dollars per pound, or that costs, just all these ingredients that are very hard to source, no matter how easy or simple it makes it look. Oh, just saute this for 5 minutes. And just like, well, yeah, but where do you get that when you live in Tennessee? So a lot of it comes down to that. But Chicago Italian food, I mean, you have plenty of good Italian markets around there, which I loved when I was in upstate New York. Like that was, I missed that weekly, is the amount of Italian import stores that was very easy to get like huge sandwiches out of, and specialty ingredients like that. So that's, I think, what you pay attention to as you start going down that road. I don't know much about cooking myself, but that's one thing I do know.
All right. Good to know. Good advice. I'll definitely take that up. Let us know what you guys are doing other than watching the White Sox, or things trying to distract you from just how bad the White Sox have been this year. In the comments section at SoxMachine.com, there's a lot of people that are excited about the Chicago Bears. Bears fans, not to be that jerk that pops the balloon of enthusiasm, because Caleb Williams does look like the real deal, and the Bears look a lot stronger, especially offensively. It is preseason. And my biggest fear now is that sod at Soldier Field already looks horrible in August. I would hate for someone key to get hurt because of the field quality. The Soldier Field sod monster just grabbing someone's leg and tearing up their knee. That would be absolutely awful, because that field quality looks terrible right now before the regular season even gets started. But I know a lot of people are paying attention to the Bears, and rightfully so. Get excited. Don't get too cocky, but definitely be excited.
We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
For the White Sox, I think the biggest thing that came out of this weekend in Houston is a bench coach finally speaking to the media. White Sox interim bench coach Doug Sisson spoke to reporters, which is something that Charlie Montoyo didn't do during his tenure, despite being an ex-manager.
I think James is still waiting for his one-on-one.
Yeah, James is still waiting for his one-on-one. And Sisson made it pretty clear that he didn't like the former White Sox manager, Pedro Grifol's mentality of flushing things away. Sisson, speaking to the Beat in Houston, said, quote, "We didn't play good baseball last night," according to Saturday. "Not at all. We have to fix that. And I don't believe in the, quote, flush it thing. Use that as a competitive edge. We have something to prove today," end quote. Now, Jim, we are starting to hear, in Sisson's case, directly, and what we have heard through the grapevine, indirectly, how some within the White Sox are very glad Grifol is finally gone, so the team could start moving in a direction that they think is right. And I feel after the season is over, there's going to be more distance away from the firing. We'll hear more dissatisfaction from White Sox management about Grifol and how he managed this team, which of course puts more blame on Jerry Reinsdorf for allowing him to even start this season to continue with the job because of contract reasons.
Yeah, I got the point of like having him start a season just because you don't want to hire a new manager with a team that's going to be this bad and waste a hire essentially with a losing season. Like even if they lost, say like, or even if they won, let's say like 55 games this year, and nobody would know at the time on opening day that 55 games would be actually good compared to what was truly possible with how really just flimsily constructed this roster was, what they would trade away, and just everything that would go wrong health-wise. So I understood just letting Grifol start the season, have him wear it essentially for a little bit, and then shift to Montoyo or whoever middle of the season. The interim label the interim label providing a measure of protection against that manager to where like if Montoyo or whoever took over and they continue to lose at that kind of pace, they'd say, well, he's interim because the team was terrible. It's not Montoyo's fault or Sizemore's fault or whoever. It's just, they'll fix it at the end of the year. So I understood the point of having him start the season, but yeah, having it go on as long as it did, especially like after April, nothing getting better.
Well, it sounds like if Getz had his way, this is the indirect part. This is the gossip. If Getz and the baseball ops had their way, Grifol, one, probably doesn't start the season as manager. But second, after the Minneapolis series, the series of Minneapolis against the Twins in late April, before they come home and they win that series against Tampa Bay, that might have been the time that they would have let Grifol go because they're 3-22.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking of time-wise, like in terms of if you really didn't like the guy, like 3-22 is like a great time to say, yep, this is why we didn't like him. But yeah, Sisson's comment was fascinating. There's a lot of, I'm not sure if it qualifies as passive aggression because like Andrew Vaughn or somebody saying like Sizemore is, he's been through it. It's like, I'm not sure if that's like a direct shot against Grifol or just, a way to praise the new guy. But Sisson himself said like, that Grady's authentic, which is kind of like, if you're criticizing, if you're saying, if you're going out of your way to point out how authentic somebody is, you might be saying that somebody else is not authentic or not genuine or not somebody who can, properly motivate people. And I think that's safe to say with Grifol that he couldn't. But yeah, the flush it thing was, I think, a good indicator of how Grifol just had no idea how he sounded. Like, I think he was somebody who's very concerned about saying what he thought people wanted to hear, which is why flush it. If you say flush it in isolated circumstance, sure, like, yeah, bad game, flush it, throw it away, get ready for the next day. But when you say it over and over again, and you don't even like acknowledge how often you've said it, like at some point I thought he might have said, we have to flush it. I'm saying that so often you would think that we have norovirus on a cruise ship or something like that with how many times we're flushing it here. Like some kind of, just greater acknowledgement of, just how poorly it's going, but he never could. He could never bring himself to not even self-deprecation, but just a greater awareness of, how it's not working, how he might have to change course. He never changed course. And I think that's the reason why it went as poorly as it did. And I think, after a while, you can see through that. You can see that, he doesn't even have a bag of tricks. He has one trick. And he's just, that's to kiss up to whoever is most responsible for continuing his employment. Became clear that Jerry Reinsdorf just praising him and calling him a great man and a great winner and, a smart baseball mind, etc. I think that's everybody just kind of rolling their eyes and making dismissive motions and just waiting for somebody to take over. And I think Sisson being there, I think Sizemore being there under contract for another year, I do think that having managers who are not lame ducks, or having like an interim staff that is not lame duck, because like Justin Jerschley could go back to Charlotte. And if somebody pisses off Jerschley there, Jerschley might be somebody who can inform the front office, or they might have to report to Jerschley last year. Like, it makes sense to try to play nice and play hard for the people who are currently in charge. There's nobody to outlast here. And I think Sisson being somebody who can try to send that message. Maybe it's like a good cop, bad cop thing with Sizemore and Sisson, helping to provide some of that, harder edge. But like everybody currently in the White Sox dugout is somebody who can take a little bit of a harder attack and not be immediately dismissed, because they could be around in some form, be it on the major league staff, be it a AAA coach, be it a major league instructor who will be at spring training. Like, there are a lot of places in the organization for them to return to after this interim staff is disbanded. And this could be one of the benefits, is just seeing a more honest account of the way things are going in the major league level, and perhaps some accountability as well.
Yeah, that last part is really key. And I think that's what maybe even Doug Sisson's getting at, because Sisson could probably still stay within the organization leading the player development efforts. Like, he's just helping Grady Sizemore, because Sisson's had not only major league coaching experience, but also college baseball experience. And he's just helping Grady Sizemore get through the last quarter of the season, and then Sisson will go back to player development efforts for the White Sox. So I agree with you, Jim. It's not like any of the coaches that are currently on staff for the White Sox, maybe except for Ethan Katz's status, depending on the new manager, they want their own pitching coach. They could all stay within the White Sox organization. So the things that are being said now with Grifol,
yeah, maybe Marcus Timms too, like who knows about him, but still.
But the things that are being said now in their attempt to coach guys up could still continue to be the same message going to 2025. And I think what was aggravating about Saturday, as we transitioned over to what we watched this weekend at Houston, and why Doug Sisson said what he did, is that third inning where they allowed 3 runs, and it could have been a lot more runs, it was more of the same, just more sloppy defensive play for the White Sox. For the Lennonites, Lenyn Sosa's not a third baseman. I don't know. He's an adventure at third base. While he may have the skill set to be a third baseman, he's got a strong enough arm, he moves well laterally. I've never seen a third baseman in the major league level get completely lost on where they're supposed to be when the ball's hit in play in the outfield. He doesn't know where his cutoff spot is. He doesn't know if he should be at the bag or not. Especially if a runner's rounding second. Is he supposed to be cut off, or is he supposed to be covering third? And I've never seen a guy miss throws so often. He misses throws so often, even at second base as well. Throws down from the catcher. Like, we make fun of it in the Sox Machine VC group chat. Like, Lenyn Sosa doesn't worry about tagging guys. He just needs to first catch the ball. Like, he's got a lot of trouble there. And I don't want to be too mean and, point out Sosa, but this is an example where the White Sox, this is Sosa's third try in the major leagues. Like, if you're going to have this guy part of your bench in 2025, you need to cut this off. Like, you need to coach him up and tell him not to flush it. Like, no, don't forget about this. You need to be constructive. You need to use this mistake as a way to get on the field and earn more repetitions, especially in games, and prove to us that you can make these plays now. And I get where Sisson's coming from. This was part of my aggravation too, especially with how Grifol handled veterans, Jim. Oh, Benintendi had a bad game. he'll flush it. He'll be back tomorrow. Then it's like a bad month. Oh, he'll just flush it the bad month. Then it's a bad quarter of the season. Then it's a bad half of the season. Like, that's just how things just cascaded under the Grifol era. That's how it cascaded last year. And it just rolled over in a bigger avalanche in 2024. So I get where Sisson's coming from. And Saturday was just another awful White Sox game to watch where the team is really sloppy. But then you watch them on Friday and you watch them on Sunday, and they played cleaner baseball and probably more to the style of baseball that Chris Getz was aiming for at the beginning part of the season, Jim, where we want to play better defense. These are going to be low-scoring games, and we're going to eke out wins if we get those opportunities. But they're going to be fastish because it's going to be hard to score runs on both sides.
Yeah, and I think Dominic Fletcher is a good individual, I guess we could say, battleground between Grifol and Sizemore, and just, or maybe Grifol and Getz, and now switching to Sizemore, we're seeing maybe how the front office wanted all along, with Fletcher playing pretty much every day, getting a start against Framber Valdez, who, probably if Fletcher does manage to establish a big league career and himself as a fixture, he will probably be a platoon bat and will probably be somebody who gets, 450 at bats a year or plate appearances a year, but doesn't really face lefties and has a caddy for that. And that's fine. But as somebody's trying to establish himself, I do think you need to play pretty much every day and show that you can't hit lefties and see if there's any growth there. And especially with given how he's playing defense. Like, he had another big series this past week. Like, he's robbed a homer. He charged a ball. He's going to the right base when he does get the ball. He gets the ball fast enough to deter runners from taking advantage of him. So, like, he's having big performances in the field. And I think that's, like you said, they were supposed to be good at one thing. On pitching side, it's supposed to be that they're supposed to be able to throw more strikes and, have more faith in the defense to be able to put balls in play and get outs from it. And we're seeing that when it came to the outfield, infield, I think, Paul DeYoung having a disappointing season, that was on DeYoung. He's a veteran. He should know better. Like, he was not that good at shortstop this year.
Yeah, disappointing defensively.
Yeah. So, that's a case where, you shrug at that, or you can't blame Grifol on the way DeYoung played because he should have been better. And we're seeing Lopez play better short. But elsewhere, like when it came to guys playing out of position and sticking with Gavin Sheets because he's got a back of a baseball card and Dominic Fletcher doesn't, that they gave just away so many runs and so many extra outs. And I think at this point of the season, when you have young pitchers like Kai Busch being in there, like having Kai Busch record as few of outs as possible, in the good way, I should say, like recording 3 outs an inning versus 5 outs an inning is what you want a young pitcher like him to do, especially if you have a feeling like your Kai Busch is kind of up in an emergency. If the White Sox, in an ideal world, they might not be reaching for him right now. They just needed him to fill a short-term gap and see if he can run with it. But for the time being, like as long as he's up there, he needs good defense. And the way the roster's built right now with a pretty young rotation that might be staying there for the next year, I think you kind of take your losses offensively and put all your resources towards, like, if you can get a pitching staff in order, if we can get a rotation in order and start building a bullpen, we'll be ahead of schedule, or at least we'll be on target with one area of this roster, and it will consume far fewer of our resources, far less of our attention, and we can try to build bats from here on out. I think that's kind of how I'm looking at it. And Fletcher, I think, helps. Kai Busch would probably not have had a quality start if Fletcher weren't in the right field. And I think that's really how they have to approach it, is just what helps the pitching, and what makes the most sense offensively. If they're not getting good at bats, like if Miguel Vargas is not hitting, there is something useful in learning how and why Miguel Vargas is not hitting. If Nick Senzel is not hitting, and they haven't played Nick Senzel at all since Vargas has joined the team, you learn nothing from Nick Senzel not hitting. So I think they're doing things correctly right now. We could get tired of it pretty shortly. If things keep going on, it's easy to be taken with the novelty of watching Fletcher against the lefty and Vargas against everybody, and that might wear thin. But for the time being, while we're learning about these guys, it's a productive use of a lack of production.
Yeah. Again, if you didn't watch any of the games this weekend, the White Sox lost 2 out of 3, which means they won a game. Friday, they won 5-4. Luis Robert Jr. hit 2 homers. Saturday, which is where the Sisson comments are coming from, they lost 6-1. That, by the way, that's now 19 consecutive losses for the White Sox when Chris Flexen makes an appearance. Poor guy, because I think he's pitching well enough to not have 19 consecutive losses, but yeah, just not a lot of help defensively and definitely not a lot of help offensively. And then on Sunday, Framber Valdez was absolutely brilliant for the Houston Astros. He was fantastic. He was able to command the lower part of the strike zone from the get-go. Once he does that, you're in for a long day as the opposing team. And as Jim mentioned, Kai Busch pitched better because of Dominic Fletcher. And let's talk about Busch and Fletcher. So Busch goes 6 innings, Jim, only allows 4 hits, 1 earned run, 3 walks, strikes out 5. So that's his first quality start as a major leaguer. And he does it on 87 pitches. You'll never see this in StatCast or advanced metrics when it comes to defense. But narratively speaking, Dominic Fletcher saved 4 runs in that game. Like you mentioned, he robbed a homer in the first inning. An amazing defensive play by Dominic Fletcher. That was going to be a 3-run homer. And then with runners on first and second on a hard hit single, he was able to rush in on that single quick enough to force the Astros third base coach to put up the stop sign. And then Busch was able to get out of that jam and to keep the game scoreless. So that's 4 runs that, like, for example, if it was Gavin Sheets in right field, that's definitely a homer. And that runner's definitely going home. The challenge, Gavin Sheets. And maybe Sheets doesn't make either of those plays and the Astros are up 4-0. We have a much different conversation about Kai Busch's start against the Houston Astros. But what have you seen from Busch that you like? And again, Fletcher's defense saving the day, especially this past week against the Yankees and now the Astros.
Busch using his defense, I think that's what you want to see. Like when he walked 12
You mean like cutting down on the walks,
yes,
right? Because the Yankees game was ridiculous.
Yeah, he had 12 walks over 8 2/3 innings coming into this game. So the fact that he walked 3 over 6, and they were... Yeah, that's still too high. I think, obviously you'd rather see that something like 2 or 1 over 6 innings, but it's fine the way they were issued. He didn't get tied up, or he didn't come in bulk to where like he lost it. He had like a Nick Nastrini inning to where all of a sudden the bases are loaded on walks and he's got to get out of it. Like he meted them out and it didn't pile up on him. He was able to correct course pretty quickly. So that helped. He was able to locate both of his breaking balls. Like he went to his curveball early and his slider later. And so by the time he got to the second time through, they didn't exactly know what they're going to be seeing. And I think that helped buy him some time. The one thing I didn't like was that his fastball velocity was down. Like he was 90, 91 early, got up to like 92, 93, but he should be 93-ish on average, and being able to touch 96, and he was nowhere close to that, and that had me worried, especially if you think that 90, 91 early is going to be like 88, 89 over the course of later innings. He was able to build up a little bit, so he didn't suffer the third time through the way I thought that he was going to. But still, like that was a little bit off, and I'm curious if that was dead arm, mechanical, maybe in an effort to clean up his control. He's lost something when it comes to having power, with the way he might be like loading up. A theory, like if he's perfectly healthy, that could be one reason why he's he lost a tick or two is because he's trying to make some change to make his mechanics more reliable. But either way, like, he gave himself a chance. He made the Astros beat him, and they tried, but Dominic Fletcher got in the way. And it was funny that Diaz was denied twice. He was denied the homer, and he was denied on the RBI single. So he should have had 4 RBIs, and he didn't. Then he hits the solo shot off Bush, so he finally gets the last laugh. But I enjoyed that little game within the game of, like, Diaz trying his best to, like, how do I score runs? And finally, like, oh, the Crawford boxes. That's the easy way. Let me just drop one in there. Even though it would have been a homer everywhere but Baltimore in that direction. But still, like, it was a fun little subplot. But ultimately, Bush, like, in the start, he needed the Astros to beat him. Like, if they're going to beat him, and I don't think they did, the White Sox offense got shut out. Like, he pitched acceptably and lost. But, like, he needed the Astros to pile up hits, come through in the clutch, show that they could see his fastball and drive it. And he got lucky here and there, but he made his own luck. And I think that's what you want to see. And I remember, like, Ozzie, going back to, like, Jack Egbert, who was one of those pitching prospects before I realized the value of velocity. Like, when I was first learning how to follow prospects and being like, oh, Jack Egbert, he's posting awesome numbers in A-ball and AA. Like, call him up. He's got to be good. And then, like, he just got stomped because he's throwing like 90, 91. Ozzie said, like, I'm happy he got stopped because at least he's throwing strikes. He's showing fearlessness. And I think there is value to that. Like, if you constantly walk guys and you never get blown out, but you never make it through 4, and you leave so much work for your bullpen, and that's just not a way to live. And I think there's early in a career, maybe if you get stomped every time, that just means you're not a major leaguer. But I think there is value in learning what it's like when major leaguers hit you and adjusting from there versus being so afraid of it you never get deep in a game. So Bush challenged, and he won this time around. It was the Astros' weaker lineup. It was a true Sunday lineup, and they kind of counted on Framber Valdez shutting down the White Sox, and he did, and it worked out well enough for Joe Espada. But you can only pitch against who the opponent lines up against you, and he did well enough.
Yeah, I mean, the Astros probably should have won 6-0 on Sunday. Yanyer Diaz, headliner, 1 homer, 5 RBIs for Diaz as the Astros blow out the White Sox again.
2 homers.
2 homers. I'm sorry. That would have been the headline. Like, Dominic Fletcher robbed Diaz of a monster day. And this is the fantasy baseball postseason as well. So I'm sure someone is screaming. I mean, like, Fletcher, you cost me. This past 6 games, though, against the Yankees and Astros, it's surprising to say the White Sox went 2-4 against 2 of the better teams in the American League. And they blew out the Yankees. Luis Robert carried the White Sox to victory on that Friday night. He went 4 for 5 with 2 homers and 4 RBIs. Great sign to see Robert have that big of an offensive game. And they lose to the Yankees because Juan Soto hits 3 homers, and they only lose 4-1. So the Yankees really needed Juan Soto to hit 3 homers. And the White Sox lose to the Astros because Framber Valdez is brilliant, and they only lose 2-0 in a game that probably was closer than it should have been. Are the White Sox playing better baseball under Grady Sizemore, Jim?
Well, I mean, it's funny when you look at a .333 winning percentage is better baseball, and that's a 54 and 108 pace, which is my preseason prediction for them, that they're going to come up well short of. But it's better. I mean, the bullpen is doing a little bit better. They had that collapse, but that will happen sometimes. Like the Yankees were doing, they were just having a disastrous time with runners in scoring position, then regression struck. So I think there will be, when you have this rotation that's struggling to get through 6 innings, or like in Garrett Crochet's case, not allowed to go more than 4, you do leave a lot of innings for a bullpen that's just looking for anybody to step into high leverage. And this is a case where Steven Wilson just having pound for pound, I think the worst season or the most disappointing season on the White Sox. When you think of like how simple it should have been, like, oh, you're just looking for a medium leverage season. He's just been lost all year, I think, just because of, whether it's arsenal changes or just trying to, get more velocity and losing something else, getting hurt. Like it's been a tough year now. He doesn't even look like a major leaguer. Gets optioned on a team where getting an option from the White Sox should feel as like a pretty big career crisis. So you're going to have games that get away just because of the amount that the bullpen's expected to cover. But I think, more of these quiet losses and more of these occasionally delightful wins, I think is really all you want to see from this point forward. And I think that's, you hope it comes from guys like Fletcher and guys like Miguel Vargas and maybe Luis Robert as well. Even if you don't think he's going to be on this team past the season, because that means he's playing well enough to get traded. But that's kind of what I'm thinking. And you're hoping that Davis Martin, who looks pretty good, will be able to, deliver starts that help the bullpen get most of the way there. Jonathan Cannon, same thing. So there is a possibility of like better times. I think there's also if Sosa has to keep playing at Brooks Baldwin, he looks like a rookie a lot of times because he's only played 8 games in AAA. Like there are some areas they can't outrun, and I think that's always going to be there. But I think this is probably a representative series in terms of like acceptable. One good, enjoyable win, one respectable loss, and then one where just the numbers are against you because of either who's starting or how many innings the bullpen has to cover or just how good the other team is.
If you're a facilities manager at a warehouse and your HVAC system goes down, it can turn up the heat, literally. But don't sweat it, Grainger has you covered. Grainger offers over 1 million industrial-grade products for all your operations, including warehouse HVAC maintenance. And even better, they offer access to experts and fast delivery, so you and your warehouse can both keep your cool. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Well, the Chicago White Sox continue this road trip after Houston. They fly out to San Francisco to face the Giants. The Giants are currently 4th place in the National League West. They have a .500 record. They're 63-63. They're 10.5 games back of the Los Angeles Dodgers. They're 4 games back of the wild card of the National League. So they're still within striking distance. They could really use a season series sweep of the White Sox here. The Giants have been strong at home. They're 36-27 at home this year, which means they are 27-36 on the road. They won their last game and in their last 10 as a .500 team on the season. They are 5-5. Your probable pitchers for this series at 8:45 p.m. Central Time starts Monday and Tuesday. Monday night, it's Jonathan Cannon against Kyle Harrison. Tuesday night, it's the Dart Davis Martin against Robbie Ray. And then on Wednesday, getaway day at 2:45 p.m. Central Time, this is a juicy matchup here. Garrett Crochet against Logan Webb. And when it comes to the Giants, this is just another typical Giants team, Jim. They are not sexy offensively. They rank middle of the pack in Major League Baseball. They currently rank 14th in Major League Baseball in team OPS. They only have 4 hitters with more than 10 homers this season, but they don't have anyone that has more than 20 homers this season. So they're kind of like the White Sox in that regard. They've hit like over 130 homers, where the White Sox rank towards the bottom at 106 home runs hit this season. So when I'm watching this series, though, I can't help because of Brian Bannister and that he's still watching Giants pitchers, maybe just because out of curiosity. But it looks like he's trying to get ideas on how his ex-pitchers are doing things, especially when it comes to the changeup and what we've learned from James Fegan in the past couple episodes about Davis Martin, utilizing a similar changeup style and how that's been working wonders for Davis Martin. So looking ahead to 2025, I'm wondering, Jim, if we should be watching these games, closely paying attention to San Francisco Giants pitchers as possible off-season targets for the Chicago White Sox.
It could be. I kind of thought that was going to happen the last time around, was that, you just find some Giants guys who Bannister and Katz enjoyed working with. But it seems like watching Davis Martin, watching Jonathan Cannon, it seems like they are able to teach, apply the same lessons that were in San Francisco to pitchers they have on hand or pitchers they can sign for, cheaper and such. And it was funny that they're watching, Hayden Birdsong and trying to apply his changeup to the one that Davis Martin is now throwing, as James wrote about. But it could be just the pitchers they know, like the body of work here. And there's maybe some value in following them to see how their arsenals hold up, the tweaks that Bannister implemented, seeing like how they last beyond the year. Because like if the White Sox are trying to make a 2026 rotation out of guys they have now, it probably makes sense to follow them a little bit beyond when they're still on the team, to just to understand, did the league catch up to these seam shifted wake changeups? Did a pitcher a year after Tommy John surgery, did their delivery change to where they couldn't throw it the same way? So I understand the value there. So I think there's probably just more instruction in just being able to understand the way some tweaks age over time, and whether the league catches up to him, and whether the Bannister has to develop a new trend, or whether like he's doing just fine the way he is as he goes to new targets. The thing that I'm kind of fascinated by the series, or like maybe morbidly fascinated, one, it's the Tom Fornelli Bowl, so he changes allegiance from the White Sox to the Giants, and we'll see who wins his heart more. But the other thing, watching the White Sox against Framber Valdez, and one, like it's a lot of fun watching Valdez pitch. Like I haven't really done it all that often, but it's cool watching a guy who can manipulate a ball like that. Just sinkers, two kinds of curveballs, good diving changeup. Like he's got an arsenal that works and moves in so many ways, and it's like really an artist with a baseball, and loved watching it. So even though he shut down the White Sox, like I enjoyed that as a baseball fan. But also when you see Corey Lee batting fifth, the lineup without Eloy Jimenez, without Tommy Pham, really sparse against left-handed pitching. And the White Sox will face two of them here with Harrison and Robbie Ray before getting to Logan Webb, who is their best pitcher. Like this could be a very low scoring series for the Sox. And so that's a case of like, when you look at Harrison or whoever Bannister's been working with, like this just could not be a series between that and a big ballpark. And, instant offense being very hard to come by in San Francisco. Like you just hope for maybe the Sunday outcome where the starting pitcher pitches well, the defense plays well, and just, a couple of bats don't go their way, and they lose with their heads held high.
The White Sox over 3 games may only score 5 runs against the Giants this week.
That might be high. Who knows?
Runs are going to be hard to come by for the White Sox this week against the Giants. But I'm hoping competitive games. Games are tight. Games are still close. Games giving us a reason to still watch as it approaches the 7th and 8th inning. Because again, it's such late night starts in Chicago. Come on, White Sox. Give us a reason to still stay tuned. Play good defense. Play fundamental baseball. Maybe be a little creative if you do get on the base paths. Challenging the Giants with either some hit and runs or maybe even trying to play small ball, even though I really hate that type of style of baseball. But when you're in San Francisco, especially at night, I get it. You have to do the little things to win games. The Giants have done that very well, especially at home. Like I said, they're 36-27, and the Giants really need this series. So this is going to be a pretty eager ball club that the White Sox should be facing. We'll be recapping these games, of course, on SoxMachine.com, and we'll talk about this series after the 3 games, as the White Sox have Thursday off before they have the longest homestand of the season coming up, where they'll play their next 10 games at home, starting against Detroit next weekend. So that's our upcoming schedule covering the Chicago White Sox.
Did you know a 2018 study showed half of prenatal vitamins tested had unacceptable levels of heavy metals? I'm Kat, mother of 3 and founder of Ritual. When I was 4 months pregnant, I couldn't find a prenatal I could trust, so I created my own. Ours is made traceable, third-party tested for heavy metals, and recently earned the Purity Award from the Clean Label Project. But don't just take my word for it. Get 25% off at ritual.com/podcast.
Now, taking a look around Major League Baseball. And for those that are new to the podcast or just catching up, we like to take the Monday episodes at the very end and chat about what's catching our attention around the rest of the league. And we have to start, Jim, with Michael Kopech. Michael Kopech's getting a lot of national attention because he is dominating with the Los Angeles Dodgers. In 9 appearances covering 9 1/3 innings, Kopech already has 4 holds. He's now been given a chance to close out games for the Dodgers, and he's 2 for 2 in save opportunities because he's got a crazy stat line. So again, 9 1/3 innings pitched. Kopech has only allowed 1 hit. He's only walked 1 batter. No runs allowed. 13 strikeouts for Michael Kopech. It is a .034 batting average against Michael Kopech, and all those concerns about Kopech going into a postseason race, pitching in a much larger market, comparatively speaking, when it comes to the Chicago White Sox to the Los Angeles Dodgers. And Kopech's not surviving, Jim. He is thriving in this role. What do you make of the recent dominance from Michael Kopech?
It's the immaculate inning form. I think that's one thing that can drive you nuts, or it's one thing that can maybe relieve a little bit of stress. Is not that he went to the Dodgers and just all of a sudden flipped a switch. They had one weird trick that turned him into an all-star caliber closer. He did show it at the very end, and I think if something's going to drive you nuts, it's why did it take so long for Kopech to stop throwing 80% fastballs, 90% fastballs, when you had Martin Maldonado there, when you had, just theoretically the pitcher whisperer and a great game planner and all his preparation. It took so long for Kopech to get through to him that it just wasn't working. And then all of a sudden he just starts throwing cutters more, drops his fastball usage to 60%. It's not like the cutter turned into an awesome pitch, just more like he threw it. He threw it good enough to be an okay pitch and for his fastball to play up more. And now he looks like that immaculate inning form, or like the form he showed in his last few outings with the White Sox. It looks like it's sticking. So I think that's maybe it's slightly heartening because the White Sox did figure it out. You just wonder why it took so long for him to do it. And partially was Kopech's stubbornness. But, when you're Kopech and you're struggling that much and you have all of these, you have Maldonado, you have Drew Butera, you have Ethan Katz, you have all these people who should be able to say, hey, stop doing this. And you didn't do it. Why did the hierarchy break down, or just why did all the safeguards in place not actually safeguard until the very, very end? So that's, I think, the question the White Sox should be asking themselves. Then it gets down to, the trade deadline and packaging them all up in one piece, Fedde and Pham and Kopech, to where it's just a 1-for-1 trade for everybody, although they do have a player to be named later. But that's, I think, the weird thing about bundling them all in the same deal is that, it felt originally like Fedde was the one being shorted because you're getting one player essentially for each, Fedde and Pham and Kopech. But now it looks like Kopech was definitely worth a standalone deal by himself just because of the potential. Even if he couldn't have commanded all that much because of just his season to date, it just makes it hard to know, what did the White Sox get for him versus what did the White Sox get for Fedde versus what did the White Sox get for Pham. When you have them all bundled together, I think you can't, say if they traded Kopech for Albertus, you could say oh, that might be fair, 1-for-1 deal. But then all of a sudden you're thinking, well, Fedde only got one player then. There's not enough. It's like a comb over. It's there's not enough players or talent to go around to make it look better because you're short a player, you're short a talent. And I think that's with Kopech pitching so well immediately out of the gates for the Dodgers, it throws that in even starker relief that the White Sox bundling them all together really puts pressure on those players, whether it's 2 of them even, like Geraldo Perez, Miguel Vargas, to do something for the White Sox so you don't show up empty-handed for Kopech and Fedde.
I mean, Kopech's been performing the best. Fedde in 3 starts, 16 innings for the Cardinals, and he has a 5.63 ERA for St. Louis right now. Home runs are biting him in the butt. He's given up 4 homers. With the Cardinals being 1-2 in Fedde starts and the 2 losses, Fedde's given up 4 homers. So that's what's complicated matters for Fedde so far in his early tenure with St. Louis. I'm confident that he can bounce back. Tommy Pham is currently batting 195 in the month of August with a 298 on base percentage and slugging 366. He had a fast start with St. Louis. He had that grand slam in his first game back. He had a mini 3-game hitting streak with St. Louis, but he is really cold again in his last 6 games. Tommy Pham has just 1 hit, and with his age, I'm just wondering if this is an aging slugger now at the finishing line or approaching the finish line for Tommy Pham. So maybe St. Louis doesn't get all that great return in this trade, but again, the Dodgers. Of course, it's the Dodgers that benefit the most with Michael Kopech absolutely dominating. My last thing, looking around Major League Baseball, and it is a surprise, especially if we return to our preseason podcast episodes, Jim, and how we talked about the American League Central. The Kansas City Royals and Minnesota Twins, again, are still within striking distance of Cleveland. Both teams are within 3 games of the Cleveland Guardians. Right now, the Kansas City Royals would be the 6th seed in the postseason. They have a 3.5 game lead over the Boston Red Sox. That's a pretty comfortable gap when it comes to wild card spots in the postseason. And the Twins are a game ahead of the Royals. So that means the Twins are 4.5 games ahead. They have a 4.5 game buffer to remain in the postseason race. Jim, the Royals and Twins are looking pretty of making the postseason with 37 some games left to go. And at the beginning part of this season, we joked about how this could be a horrible division. The Minnesota Twins might be the only good team in this division. To now, half of the American League postseason is going to be the American League Central.
I think the White Sox have something to do with that. Like when the Twins and Royals both go 12-1 against them, like that does... When you have a team that's historically bad, some teams are going to be inflated because of that. And I think the White Sox have directly helped the rest of the division. But it does, even then, it's helpful because so much of the White Sox hopes this year, so much of their approach to downplaying their current problems was, well, look at the division we play in. You know, the AL Central, it could be anybody's division. Even if we're not in it right now, the turnaround could be pretty quick because we're not playing with the Yankees or Orioles or the AL East or the NL West or anything. It's the AL Central. The White Sox should know this by now. They've been playing the AL Central since 1994. 1994. So they should know that their division's normally bad, and they still haven't been able to take advantage of it to any meaningful degree. Good for the AL Central for stepping up and looking like maybe the league's deepest, maybe the strongest top 4. I guess the AL East has the Rays, who are over 500 again. They keep, every time you want to count them out, they're great at doing the Undertaker meme and just popping out of the casket. And then they usually fall back down this year, but at least they keep, they can't be pinned yet. And they're just kind of floating around the periphery, despite no name brand talent and bad offense. And I don't know how they're getting by. But I think, 1 through 4, the AL Central look as good as any division, basically. And even if the White Sox are to credits, good for making the White Sox eat their words when they've never been able to take advantage of how little the division spends and how a lot of those teams haven't been run well. The Royals for the David Glass years, not run well. Tigers for many of their years, not run well. Twins, pretty poorly run, or at least they had a big problem getting out of the Ron Gardenhire era and had some dark times. So aside from the Guardians, maybe the last, Terry Francona's, last decade, there haven't been any heavyweights or cruiserweights or anything like that to really be afraid of. And the White Sox still haven't been able to get it done.
Yeah. If Chris Getz goes in this offseason and says, well, we view the American League Central as pretty, Chris, I need you to stop. No White Sox employee should comment about the quality of the division, to your point, Jim, because you've never taken advantage of it ever. Maybe not ever. Rarely.
Isolated seasons.
If it's been this weak forever and you can't consistently win the division, what does that say about you? Your organization? It's just funny. again, they're sitting pretty. Both the Royals and Twins have a 3.5+ game buffer between making the postseason and not making the postseason. And that's really what you have to watch for in the American League is can the Boston Red Sox, the Seattle Mariners are falling back in both the American League West and in the wild card. They're closer to the Astros than they are to the Kansas City Royals, for example. So Seattle's best chance of making the postseason is to chase down the Houston Astros and try to win the American League West. I don't know if they're going to be able to do that. That's going to be a pretty disappointing season if Seattle does not make the postseason with how big of a lead they had in the American League West at one point. But that's what caught my attention is we've been talking about how the playoff race is starting to normalize here, and we have a better understanding of who the real contenders are of making the postseason. And right now we're going to be talking about 3 American League Central teams in the playoffs. And that is a bit shocking, but that's just how the cookie is crumbling in 2024. Jim, how about you? What is catching your attention around Major League Baseball?
AJ Hinch, when you look at his managerial record, obviously his record with the Astros, hard to beat. You know, he ended with 300-win season. Of course, you can talk about how it ended and whether anything can be taken away from the trash can banging scheme. But in terms of like wins and losses, hard to beat what he did in Houston. However, when you look at what he's done around that, Diamondbacks, 1.5 losing seasons before he was fired. Tigers, 77-85, 66-96, 78-84, now 61-64. So I'm curious, I was surprised when Hinch, they talk about like how much front office pull he has and everything like that. Like, is he a good manager or is he just like, okay?
I am confident to say he's mediocre at this point. And now that you bring this point up, is Chris Getz going to be competing with the Detroit Tigers for managerial jobs?
I think the Tigers seem committed to Hinch. I'm just surprised by like how secure he is and like how much pull he supposedly has like in player decisions when, outside of Houston, and when you see what Houston's done since he left, like Dusty Baker goes to 2 consecutive World Series, wins one. Joe Espada, no managerial experience, has a really rough start, but once they got rid of Jose Abreu, unfortunately, like they look like the Houston of yore. They're 36-18 now, since they released Abreu. So they're back to being a pretty compelling October threat. With Joe Espada there. So like they've shown really no slowing down since Hinch left. And since he's gone to the Tigers, and obviously the Tigers, they fired their general manager. They went from Al Avila to Scott Harris, and they ditched their rebuild because it wasn't panning out, but also like they just really haven't been able to progress. They've had some pitching prospects flare out. They've had some successes here and there, but also like the Torkelson pick, he's been kind of lost. Riley Green's been hurt. They really haven't been able to put together a compelling, just a roster in general. Like they've lacked for runs. Pitching staff, like their bullpens go, their rotation is bad and vice versa. And Hinch has some say in how the roster is built. So I'm curious, like, if there is going to be a moment where they wonder if Hinch is actually worth like giving that much power to. Now, to be fair to my own evaluation abilities, I thought that Rocco Baldelli should have been fired because the Twins were not good at problem solving for quite a long time with like the way they had a rotation full of guys who struggled to go 5 or 6 innings. They had that whole theory with Wes Johnson there as the pitching coach, like, oh, we just need to have them go twice through the order and we'll turn it over to our bullpen. And then like by the time the second half of the season rolled around, their bullpen would wear out. Even their 5-inning starters would get hurt, and other prospects on the position player side wouldn't pan out, and they'd be in the same boat of being like 500-ish and never quite delivering on the talent they have. And they've looked better the last 2 years. So I think like maybe it is a case where just the talent dictates how good a manager looks. But I am curious, like, just because the White Sox, they wanted to hire Hinch. His autograph was on Tony La Russa's introductory graphic announcing his hiring because they figured it would be Hinch. That would Hinch have made any difference with the White Sox? That's kind of how I'm looking at this. And so far with the way the Tigers have gone, like I'm kind of motivated to say probably not. Maybe they would have been okay. Maybe they might have eked out a wild card appearance during the 500 season, but I could see it going the same way. And Hinch just being somebody who can carry himself in a way because he does have a World Series title and does have that record with Houston, but also he's as good as his front office is. And when they don't provide him a roster, he's nothing special.
Yeah, the Tigers still have some games against the White Sox. I think they have 7 games remaining against the Chicago White Sox. So they have a chance to finish at or slightly above 500. Which again,
they get that same boost.
Yeah, they can get that same boost that the Royals and Twins are getting. And then the conversation is at the end of the season, wow, the American League had 4 teams that were 500 or better. We haven't seen that. And of course, you may be seeing historically the worst team ever to play Major League Baseball in the Chicago White Sox, going great lengths in helping out. But the White Sox only have 13 games against these 4 teams for the season. So their other 140 plus games that they have are still against the rest of Major League Baseball. And the teams outside of Detroit, they've been playing well. I'm kind of with you. I don't know. Like, maybe Detroit could have a change of heart and decide after 4 seasons, this is not working. But maybe they don't put the blame on AJ Hinch that Spencer Torkelson had to go back in AAA to figure things out. He's back with the Major League club. There's been so many injuries on the pitching front for Detroit that for whatever reason, things are just not completely clicking. But it's been 4 years in Detroit. And if he's not let go after this season, he's going to be given a 5th year. And if things don't click in 2025, how much longer are the Tigers going to run with AJ Hinch? I think you bring up an interesting point of something to watch within the American League Central. Everybody else seems very happy. Cleveland's happy. Minnesota's happy. Kansas City is really happy. The White Sox are very unhappy.
White Sox are dead. Nobody can feel.
Detroit, how does Detroit feel about things? And they've been kind of stuck in the middle here for a while. So we'll see what happens with Detroit at the rest of these games. And again, the playoff races have been very exciting in both the American and National Leagues. We have some exciting races at the top as well, and who will be getting home field advantage throughout the postseason. Lots of reasons to watch. If you're tired of White Sox baseball, watch the other 29 teams. Well, I should say 28, because the White Sox theoretically are playing another team when they're on the field, if they're not playing themselves or try to overcome their shortfalls. But yeah, there's so much going on. The MVP races are heating up. Aaron Judge is having a phenomenal year. Bobby Witt's having a phenomenal year. Juan Soto is going to make so much money this upcoming offseason. There's a lot of exciting reasons why to continue to watch baseball, even though the White Sox are historically bad. But that will do it for this episode of the Sox Machine Podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you just discovered the Sox Machine Podcast, you can subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts, such as Spotify and Apple Music. You can also listen to the show on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/SoxMachine. If you do listen or watch our shows on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button. We greatly appreciate it. You can follow us on social media. We're on all the platforms at Sox Machine. You can follow James Fegan. He's at JR Fegan. You can follow me at SoxMachine_Josh. If you enjoy our work and want full access to all of our coverage of the Chicago White Sox, especially all of the coverage that James Fegan has been bringing from Charlotte and Kannapolis as he visited the White Sox affiliates to learn more about the White Sox player development efforts, maybe a couple guys we'll see get their cup of coffee in the month of September, sign up at patreon.com/SoxMachine, where monthly plans start at $5. Annual subscriptions save you money as well, and you'll get an ad-free version of both the podcast and website, and again, full access to all of our coverage. And there's some other options as well, different tiers that give you direct access to both James and Jim via the group chat and monthly Zoom calls. Again, sign up at patreon.com/SoxMachine. The Sox Machine Podcast is a production of SoxMachine.com. You're on for all things Chicago White Sox baseball and part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. Alongside Jim Margulis, I'm Josh Nelson. Thanks for listening and watching.
We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.